There's never a dull moment when it comes to Minnesota sports. Whether it's on the gridiron,
for the end zone, it's Jefferson who's got the touchdown.
On the court,
Edwards thinking three and popping a three.
On the ice,
it's Kaprizov with an open net, he scores.
Or on the diamond.
Buxton hammers that to left field. Another Minnesota home run.
Whether it's positive,
I think this is a good enough roster to make the playoffs.
Or negative.
He's terrible, awful. Don't get it, don't understand it.
Whether there's optimism,
hey, they might be able to even make it to a conference final.
Or pessimism.
Don't expect me to be super excited. I mean, I don't know. Does this really do much for anybody?
There's always something to chat about.
Shout out to Minnesota Sports Chat. Keep on being elite.
If you're looking for fun, informative discussion on all things Minnesota sports, you've come to the right place. This is Minnesota Sports Chat. And now, here's your host, Ross Brendel.
There truly is never a dull moment in Minnesota sports, as that open would say, but some moments are perhaps more dull than others. Gopher football done, Minnesota Vikings done, Twins baseball, Twins report to spring training in a couple weeks. Timberwolves and Wild halfway through their regular season. So I wouldn't say certainly dull, but there is a bit of a dearth of things going on. Welcome inside edition number 152 of the soon-to-be award-winning Minnesota Sports Chat. Yes, you know it by now. Award-winning, if only in my own mind. Manny Hill from Jazz 88, Score North, and parts in between in just mere moments. A reminder, please rate and review Minnesota Sports Chat on Apple and Spotify, and please do your best to tell your friends, families, and even your arch nemesis all about Minnesota Sports Chat. And if you're listening to this podcast via the Score North Taxi Squad, I encourage you to subscribe to Minnesota Sports Chat wherever it is that you get your podcasts. We welcome back in to fill the Manny quota, which we've never quite defined what it is, other than I believe it's probably a monthly appearance. The man, the myth, the melodious tones of Mr. Manny Hill. How you doing, my guy?
Always good, my friend. How are you?
You know, I really, aside from it being freezing out on the day of this record, at least here in the Twin Cities, people do listen all across the country and the world, believe it or not. Probably a lot nicer in other parts of the country than Minneapolis, St. Paul on this January 30th record date. But you know me, the eternal optimist, Manny. At least the sun's out today. It might be freezing, but the sun is out.
Yeah, I noticed that when I went out today earlier, it was, I knew it was cold. I knew we were down and we are going to be in the single digits at the absolute warmest. But it didn't feel completely miserable. You know how sometimes you walk out and it just hurts. It's like, it's like
the definition of bone-chilling cold, right?
Yeah, it's like this, remember in Rocky 3 where they asked, Mr. T, Clubber Lang, what's your prediction for the fight? And he just goes, pain. It's kind of like, it's on a lot of days during the wintertime, it's like, hey, what's the forecast going to be like today? Pain. But today it wasn't, it was really cold, but it didn't feel as bad, and I think that's largely because the sun was out.
I actually do believe, and you might know this better than I would, I think all the Rocky movies, or at least the first 3 or 4, are now on the Netflix machine, I believe.
They are.
I have seen that. So multiple times I've thought about going through that and just watching them, because it's been years.
Always love watching Rocky 4, you know that.
It's been years. It's been years, Manny, since I've seen any of them. And the beauty of the Rocky movies, in all honesty, it's better to watch them in order, but you don't ever really need to watch any of them in order, because if you didn't watch one, they basically tell you why there's another movie, right? So you can just hop in at any point. Is that your favorite sports movie franchise? Or do you have other ones? We might as well, talk some nonsense. I mentioned it's a bit of a dull right now, a duller time in Minnesota sports. So let's talk some nonsense. Favorite movie franchise when it comes to sports?
That's a good question. I would say probably. But it's so weird because the first Rocky movie isn't even it's hard to really even call it a sports movie because it's more of a love story.
It's a love story.
Yeah, it's more like a romantic drama, and then the guy in the movie he just so happens to be a aspiring professional boxer that gets a shot at the heavyweight title, so. But yeah, I would say so, probably.
I think I'd put Major League in there, even though Major League 3 was largely unwatchable, except for the tie-in to the Minnesota Twins and having some of the original cast of characters. The Mighty Ducks trilogy is always worth a watch, but I think, truth be told, we probably overvalue that being from Minnesota, but that doesn't mean we can't enjoy it. I'm not sure a hockey fan in Manitoba enjoys it quite like we do. Right. I could be wrong though. But then it's funny, I ask you about franchises, sports franchises, and trying to go off the top of my head, are there really many sports franchises? It tends to just be a single movie here and there.
Yeah, that's kind of what I was thinking because, when you asked me that, I was thinking like, well, it kind of almost has to be Rocky, right? Almost by default because you don't really think of, there's the Mighty Ducks and
the Sandlot. The Sandlot put out a lot of movies, Manny, but they've all largely been awful except for the first one.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, I can't imagine. I don't even think how many sequels of those did they make?
Oh boy, I think there's at least 2, maybe even 3 or 4 at this point.
I think I remember seeing the second one, but I don't know if I saw anyone beyond that.
I think the second Sandlot, legitimately the tie-in was basically something along the lines of, oh, my cousin used to play here. Like, that's how they tried tying it together. It was just like a 30-second mention, and that was it. Okay, well, that might be enough movie talk. If you have a favorite movie, I don't know, why don't you rate and review Minnesota Sports Chat and tell me what it is in your Apple review. Manny, conference championship games were this past Sunday. The Philadelphia Eagles defeated the San Francisco 49ers, and the Kansas City Chiefs defeated the Cincinnati Bengals. I had a feeling both home teams would win. I don't know if I thought they would happen the way they did or how the games would play out. But I do think the Super Bowl that we're going to see with some Minnesota tie-ins, you got Linval Joseph and Harris, I believe, both playing for the Eagles. I'd have to look and see. Do we have any Gopher football players on either the Eagles or the Chiefs? We'd have to look that up. Also, Jerick McKinnon, former Minnesota Viking. So there's some Minnesota Viking angles in this Super Bowl. Did anything jump out to you or surprise you in the championship games? It's disappointing that Brock Purdy got injured, but I really feel like that wouldn't have changed the outcome that much. I still feel like Philadelphia probably would have won comfortably. We'll never know. Yeah. But honestly, not a lot stood out to me. I did kind of think that Kansas City would win a close game. I thought they would finally grind one out against Cincinnati versus going the other way.
Well, it's kind of law of averages, right? Like you and I, we always talk about, if eventually everything kind of balances itself out. And when you look at Cincinnati winning 10 games in a row going into the AFC title game, and then having kind of owned the Chiefs over the last, 2.5, whatever seasons, you kind of figure, well, at some point, Kansas City has got to get this done and sort of get over this little mini hump that is Joe Burrow and the Cincinnati Bengals. And they were able to do that, and it kind of felt like I looked at that matchup as, okay, Cincinnati's the better overall, well-rounded team. I thought their defense was better. They have a quarterback that is maybe a slight step below Patrick Mahomes, but he's certainly a guy that can lead a team to a Super Bowl as he did last season in Joe Burrow. So I felt like the Bengals were the better team going in, but I think Kansas City being at home and everybody kind of making a big deal about Patrick Mahomes' ankle, is he going to play? Well, we all knew he was going to play, but we didn't know how effective he was going to be. And he's shown so many times in all of his years now, 5 years of being a starting quarterback in the NFL, that he's just a wizard, and it's what makes him the greatest quarterback in this game today, and arguably, I think, even a half a decade into his career, one of the great quarterbacks that we've seen in the history of this league when you just look at his physical abilities and, all of his accomplishments as well. So you just kind of felt like he was going to put on some sort of a Superman performance. And we kind of saw it with just that 5-yard run on the last drive, that he was going to make something happen, even on a hobbled ankle. So it was an incredible game, and congratulations to the Chiefs for getting it done and getting back to the Super Bowl. It's their third trip to the Super Bowl in 4 years.
Yeah, and just think about, and there'll be a lot of this over the next 2 weeks. There's always talking points with the Super Bowl, but this one has the Kelsey brothers facing off against each other.
Yeah.
The Andy Reid Bowl, you can call this. He took the Eagles to so many NFC Championship games, lost a Super Bowl. Now he will play the Eagles in the Super Bowl, which is a great subplot no matter what. If he loses to the Eagles, the team that he couldn't get over the hump years later then beats him in a Super Bowl. Or maybe kind of a bit of a culmination thing where he goes through everything he went through with the Eagles, albeit he's already won a Super Bowl with Kansas City, but maybe he wins his second and perhaps last Super Bowl by beating a team he coached for, a decade? So
Over a decade, yeah.
There's some fun talkers here. And by the way, thanks to gophersports.com, I was able to find no Gopher football players this year in the Super Bowl. When the Vikings aren't in the Super Bowl, which is my entire life, I tend to base who I want to win the Super Bowl off of how many Gophers are on their team or any, unless it's Devondre Campbell and the Green Bay Packers, then I would obviously cheer against him. So now I think my theory or thought should be, I kind of like Andy Reid. I mean, at least as a coach, I mean, I don't know him personally at all, but
yeah,
I think I kind of lean towards cheering for Kansas City. I do got a feeling that Philadelphia might win, but I don't have to make any harsh opinion or thought today.
Yeah, it feels like Philadelphia is playing better than Kansas City is. I mean,
and I think they're just a lot healthier.
Yeah, they are. And I think when you look at what Philadelphia is able to do defensively, the way they're able to just pressure quarterbacks, the way they got after Daniel Jones in the divisional round, the way they got after Brock Purdy and Josh Johnson in the NFC Championship game on Sunday, with Hassan Reddick just being just a monster as a pass rusher. And how'd you like to be the Arizona Cardinals? You drafted that guy in the first round. You let him walk because he was a little underwhelming the first couple of years. You weren't patient with him. You declined his fifth-year option. You let him walk. He goes to Carolina for a year. How'd you like to be the Carolina Panthers? You held on to him for 1 year, and then you let him go. He went to play with Matt Rule, his old college coach at Temple. And then you're the Eagles, and you say, hey, we've got a rookie quarterback, or we have a quarterback on a rookie scale contract. Let's bring in Hassan Reddick as a pass rusher, give him a 3-year deal. We've got the money to do it. Let's add him to this defense, and here they are. But I think just the way the Eagles are able to pressure to get after the quarterback is going to be really interesting, in this matchup. Patrick Mahomes, okay, he's going to have kind of that extra week to maybe, ice up that ankle a little bit and, maybe get a little bit more movement in it. But it's a high ankle sprain, so you kind of wonder how mobile he's going to be, a couple of weeks from now when the game is played.
So I got into a lot of trouble with Cyclones Nation because I had the audacity to say, although I don't cheer for injury, I was actually mildly happy that I wouldn't have to hear every 7 seconds about how great Brock Purdy was. So, and again, I don't celebrate the injury. I didn't want him to get injured. I don't wish injury upon anybody. But I bring that up to bring this up. Sports talking points or players you're just thoroughly annoyed by. The moment you hear from them, or the moment they say anything, mine, and I've stolen this from a buddy, it's always been this way, but I've been more annoyed in recent memory, is that we always need to know what LeBron James is thinking. ESPN loves to do that. I'm surprised we didn't see it yesterday. What did LeBron James have to say about Butker's big field goal with no time left? They always show his tweets. That annoys me. And I just get, and again, I'm a part of it, but I do get really annoyed when we take a guy like Brock Purdy and we anoint him before he's ever really done anything. And then people are like, oh, well, look at Josh Johnson. He's terrible. This proves Purdy's legit. I never said he's not legit. I just don't need to hear about him every 5 seconds. So do you have players or anybody in the sports realm that when you hear about them or you just see them on TV and you go, ugh, that's enough?
Well, not anymore. I think. Tim Tebow was kind of an obvious one, right? I mean, for
I was going to say not anymore. What, did somebody die?
no, no, but just the ones that are just constantly. I mean, Tim Tebow was one. I think Johnny Manziel was another one that.
Oh, Johnny's a good one.
Yeah, because it got to the point with Johnny Manziel where we were still talking about him by the time he was out of the league, when the Browns basically said, we don't want anything to do with you anymore. We're going to release you.
SportsCenter would lead off. SportsCenter would lead off with him about being kicked off of the Montreal Alouettes.
Yeah.
Like, nobody cares. Johnny Manziel, that's a good one. Okay, so here's a Vikings tie-in to the NFC Championship game and the AFC Championship game. How far away, and maybe the Vikings are going to intentionally get further away in the offseason, time will tell. The Vikings qualified and played in the same playoffs that the Kansas City Chiefs and Philadelphia Eagles played in.
Mm-hmm.
However, it's really tough to put them anywhere in the same stratosphere as those two teams.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, I don't want to be all doom and gloom. The Vikings have some things, primarily on the offensive side of the ball, that they do well. I mean, they have, at least for now, this is going to change, but Dalvin Cook and Madison, pretty good backs that can do some things. Justin Jefferson, maybe the best receiver in the NFL. TJ Hawkinson was great for them. There are some things that the Vikings do well, and there are some good players. But they're just not even close to the two teams that are going to the Super Bowl.
No.
I mean, there's not even close.
Yeah, it's not even a discussion. I mean, it's just, you look at the way the Vikings performed defensively against the Giants in the wild card, and then what that same Giants offense didn't do in Philadelphia a week later. I mean, it's not close. It's not close. If the Vikings would have found a way to beat the Giants, they would have gone into San Francisco and they would have gotten drubbed. I mean, it
would have been the same fate.
Yeah, it would have been the same fate. And, you just, well, I mean, for example, like look at what happened to Dallas in San Francisco. It wasn't a blowout, but did anybody really feel like Dallas was going to win that game? Probably not, right? The way the Niners defense, the way they were playing, and Dak turning the ball over the way he was, it just never really felt like, even though it was a one-score game for most of the way through, I was just watching. I'm like, Dallas isn't going to do anything against this Niners defense.
Yeah, I kind of thought
that's a Cowboys team that blew the Vikings out by 37 points at US Bank Stadium.
I kind of thought, Manny, that Dallas was going to win, and I think I was on record for that, but it was mainly for illogical reasons. Just like I said, I thought the Vikings could make the NFC Championship game. It's foolish now, but I acknowledge from the get-go it was all for illogical reasons, not really football-based, just because I didn't think that the NFC was all that good, except for probably the Philadelphia Eagles, and at this point, that appears to have played itself out with the Eagles winning the NFC Championship. Do you care at this point to say one way or another how you're leading before we talk a little bit more Minnesota-based sports? But we had to talk about the title games.
Yeah, I mean, I think I just have a feeling. Boy, it's
going to be a tough one.
It is tough because it feels like the way the Eagles are playing, it feels like they should. I mean, they're opening up their 2.5? Is the line 2.5 out of the game?
I saw 2.5 this morning.
Yeah, so it feels like the Eagles are playing better overall. They're more balanced. Their defense has been fantastic, and their offense with Jalen Hurts has been outstanding, and the weapons that he has. But it just kind of feels like Kansas City. It's just like they're a team that is just destined to kind of establish themselves as kind of a mini dynasty. The way that they've been able to get to Super Bowls and finding a way to win a second one here in the last 4 seasons. The way they dramatically won that AFC title game on Sunday, it just kind of feels like they're going to find a way to will their way to this this victory, because a lot of people, when they won 3 years ago against the Niners, a lot of people picked the Niners to win that game because of how the Niners were playing going into that Super Bowl. And the Chiefs just found a way to win, despite San Francisco kind of outplaying them for about 2.5 quarters. It feels like I'm kind of getting the same vibes here. It just feels like Patrick Mahomes is just on another level than, from anybody else in the league, and that he's just going to find a way to him and Travis Kelce are going to find a way to will this team to a championship.
Well, and in 2 weeks, that ankle will be better than it was on Sunday, and on Sunday it was good enough to beat Cincinnati, who maybe on a neutral field or in Cincinnati does win that game, and maybe we're talking about Cincinnati going for their first Super Bowl win or tying the Minnesota Vikings
with a fourth loss.
Yeah, with a fourth Super Bowl loss. We'll leave the NFL right there so I can tell everybody about the good folks at Beans Coffee Company. Don't miss out on all things Beans Coffee Company. Super simple. Subscribe to their newsletter. Subscribers, you'll receive advance notice on limited time sales, new releases, promo codes, and so much more. Do so at coffeebybeans.com. While you're there, you can sign up for a coffee subscription. Subscriptions can be set up in 1 to 8 week intervals. They can be customized by your favorite blend. I love that Perfectus and Mikado. Oh, just thinking about the Perfectus. I had it this morning. It's so good. I love that stuff. 12-ounce, 5-pound bulk bags. Choose your own adventure. Remember those books, Manny Hill, the Choose Your Own Adventure books? You can do that with your Beans Coffee. Choose your own adventure. 12-ounce bag or 5-pound bulk bag delivered to you every week, or again, maybe 2 weeks, 3 weeks, 4 weeks, up to you. Don't forget to use the promo code SPORTSCHAT when you order. You'll save upon checkout. Beans Coffee Company, they ship anywhere in the United States. Free shipping on all orders of $35 or more. Order by the bag if intervals is not your thing, subscription's not your thing, no problem. You can order by the bag at coffeebybeans.com. That is coffeebybeans.com. Support those who support Minnesota Sports Chat, and Beans Coffee Company does just that. Manny Hill, Ben's boys, 7-13 overall, 1-9 in the Big Ten, bringing up the rear. 14th, by the way, 14th place in the Big Ten. Go figure that one out. Outside chance to move up to 11, 12, or 13, but realistically, they're going to finish in last place. Realistically, not guaranteed, but more than likely that's going to happen. I talked about this with Daniel House a couple weeks ago. Manny, I can't make sense of this. Not that I expected the Gophers to really be any good, but I expected them to be better. Last year, they had less talent, and they were a better basketball team. This team has more talent, and there's been some things that have went their way. Battle wasn't healthy right away. They're still down Parker Fox and Enan, who aren't going to play this year. But they're just, they don't do a lot of things well. And I love to rip on Talon Cooper because I don't think he's very good, although people always tell me, oh, look at his numbers, look at his numbers. Well, anybody's going to put up good numbers when you're constantly getting drubbed and you're on the floor all the time. I just, to me, one of the big problems is the two guards, Talon Cooper and Samuels, they're just not Big Ten players. And if they are, they can't play the minutes that they're playing. I think that's really hurt them. I don't understand what they do offensively. Half the games, it's evergreen topic, Manny. We talk about this all the time. Literally my entire life. Excuse me. I get so worked up, I can't even talk. They go through stretches of no offense. How does this happen? Every coach, every regime, every year.
It's like it's like the same question of why are the Timberwolves always bad on defense, even when they have like all NBA defensive players like Jimmy Butler on the roster and Rudy Gobert. Like, how are they still bad? How can
a team with 2 7-footers be bad on defense? Now, one hasn't played much this year, but that doesn't make any sense to me. So the Gopher thing, Manny, to me, it's just it's interesting. I believe that Dawson Garcia is a pretty good player. How could he not be? He was on North Carolina's radar and was on their roster. I think we know Jamison Battle's a pretty good player. And I know it takes more than 2 guys in the Big Ten, but I by no means am calling for Ben Johnson to lose his job. I think we got to get through 3 full seasons.
Yeah.
But the early returns aren't great. I mean, once Once the league caught up to what the Gophers were doing about halfway through last year through now, it's really bad basketball. It's just not good.
Yeah, and I think it kind of goes back to that same question.
I can hear the pain in your voice because you're like me.
Yeah.
I think you really want this program to be good, and I still think they might be good. We got the Christie kid on the way, Dennis Evans. Who knows? But then again, who really knows how good they are? You never know.
Yeah, well, who knows how good they are, and it is hard to win basketball games in the Big Ten. Like, you got to be really good, and you have to be, your starting five, 1 through 5, you've got to have really good quality players in your starting 5, 1 through 5, in order to like legitimately compete in this conference. And oh, by the way, USC, we talked about this with football, right? USC and UCLA are coming into this conference. UCLA has a long, rich history of college basketball, successful college basketball, and I'm not just speaking on the John Wooden days of the 60s and 70s. Even into the 90s with Herrick and the O'Bannon brothers and
your boy Steve Lavin.
Yeah, Steve Lavin, Ben Howland had some really good teams that went to the Final Four a couple of times
until Tubby got him fired.
Yeah, indeed. Tubby and Shabazz Muhammad. But I just think it's so hard to win in this conference. And what was the main reason why Ben Johnson was hired? Was because, well, he was a good recruiter, right? He recruited the local kids. Ross, you have heard me say this a million times when it comes to Gopher basketball, right? I don't care where these kids are from. I don't care if they're from Minnesota. I don't care if they're from Edina or Hopkins or Woodbury or wherever, or if they're from San Antonio, Texas, like Jordan Murphy was. I just want this team to get good players, get the best possible players you can get, mold them into a team, and then see what you can do and compete. I mean, the greatest team that this program has ever had that went to the Final Four 26 years ago, a lot of those players were not from here. Yeah, Sam Jacobson was from here, but Bobby Jackson, Courtney James, a lot of those other guys were not local kids from Minnesota. They were really good basketball players. And so that to me has to be the goal. And so, Ben Johnson's going to have to, yeah, we know that he can recruit Minnesota kids, but he's going to have to be able to step outside of the state too. Get some kids from Iowa, get some kids from Wisconsin, get some, there's a good kid out in the Dakotas that's like a 7-footer that's really good. Let's stop him from going to like Colorado or something and get him here.
Personally, for me, Manny, he just needs to go down to Lakeville and stop every kid from Lakeville from going to Wisconsin and turning into a good basketball player.
Yeah, well, and that's and honestly, like, I know that that's part of the frustration with fans about getting, keeping local kids here, because we don't want to see a kid go to Iowa or Wisconsin or like Northwestern or Illinois or something like that. We don't want to see that stuff. And I get that. But to me, it's just like, just get the best players. Get the best players you can possibly get, and this team will be good. And that's what it's going to come down to.
I still think that there's a chance that it's going to work out for Ben Johnson. It's really tough a year and a half, almost 2 seasons in, to really evaluate somebody. But I will say this. If he gets through year 3 and you're talking, this year's team's going to win, I don't know, maybe 1 or 2 more games. So you're talking about I don't know. What's best case scenario?
Will they win 1 or 2 more games?
I don't know. I don't think so, but maybe. But let's just say this. Okay, so they're between somewhere in 1-19 and 4-16. Okay, coming off of last year, which I think was 5-15, right around there. I'd have to look that up.
Did they win 5 games in the conference last year?
Maybe it was 4-16. I'd have to look it up, and I will look it up when I ask you this question. If he doesn't win 6 or 7 Big Ten games next year, and you're talking 5 wins or less, that's going to be really tough for Mark Coyle to keep him around. And it's the same thing I'll say about what I've said about Lindsay Whalen. Her team's struggling again in the Big Ten. If Lindsay Whalen's name wasn't Lindsay Whalen, I think she'd already be out of a job.
Yeah, because she's in year 5, right?
That has not been a good run either. Did you pull up Ben's record? I saw you typing.
No, I was looking at something else, another point that I was going to bring up as it relates to Gopher.
I'll pull it up for you.
But yeah,
right. They're going to have to show really good signs of improvement, right?
Yeah,
They'll just have to.
Yeah, and look, Mark Coyle is going to have to make some difficult decisions. Like if things are not going well, it's going to have to, he's going to have to make a choice. And the idea of maybe moving on from Lindsay Whalen again, if not saying do that now, but like if things don't really start to turn around, and the thing with Lindsay is she's supposedly got some really good recruiting classes that have been like coming in, at least like I think like next year's recruiting class is supposed to be really good.
Well, and this one that's already playing is supposed to be really good.
Right. So you got to start seeing results, man. And I know that we saw Ryan Saunders get fired. Ryan Saunders was the son of the greatest coach in the history of the team that he was coaching, and they moved on from him. So it's you can't be afraid to do that, I think, if you're Mark Coyle. And again, I'm not advocating for that right now. I'm not saying that both Ben and Lindsay need to be on the hot seat and you need to, show them the door after the season. But we do need to start seeing some results here. It's, I think more so with Lindsay than Ben. Because Ben's only in year 2, but Lindsay's in year 5. Like we got to start really starting to see, some results here.
So Ben is currently in Big Ten play, 5-25, 4-16 last year.
Okay.
1-9 this year. That's less than a 170 winning percentage. That's going to take an awful long time, even if he is successful, just to get back to, the 500 mark. Lindsay Whalen for housekeeping. It's a bit better than I thought it was, but it's still nothing to write home about. She's 60-57 overall, but in the Big Ten, she's 28-44. No finish is higher than tied for 6th place. That, ironically, was actually her first year, so she's actually gotten worse in time.
So I told you that I was looking up a stat as it pertains to Gopher basketball, right? So what's Ben Johnson's winning percentage in Big Ten play?
What did I just say? It was 5. He's 5-25.
So that's what? Is that?
I'm a
200 win percentage or something?
I'm a Lakeville graduate who 166. I'm a Lakeville graduate, Manny, but the last math class I took was in 10th grade. I really suck at math, and I won't even hide from that. I had to use a calculator to figure that out. But yeah, 166 winning percentage is what 5-25 is in Big Ten play.
Okay, so, I'm looking at this, and Richard Pitino's Big Ten win percentage. Richard Pitino went 54-96. Richard Pitino is doing pretty well in New Mexico right now this year.
Yeah, things are going well for them, aren't they?
So Richard Pitino was 54-96 in Big Ten play in what, 8 seasons? That's a 360 win percentage. Tubby Smith in 6 seasons was 46-62. That's a 426 win percentage. Dan Munson was 44-68. That's a 393 win percentage.
Okay, so this actually, though, we've talked about this numerous times. I'm glad you brought up these numbers.
Yeah.
But this does complicate the matters, right? We have to have some self-awareness and I guess situational awareness as to where the lot in life is for Gopher basketball.
Yeah.
The expectation should be to make tournaments, if not every year, maybe every other year, at the very least every third year. But that historically has not been the case. So, yeah, it's very easy to jump on Ben Johnson, but alone what you just said right there does make you think, even if next year's catastrophic, you probably kind of do have to wait out at least into the 4th season to see where it goes, right? Because historically, you lay out all those numbers and average those out. That's like a 400 winning percentage, probably even less than that.
And Clem Haskins,
Big
by
Ten
the way, Clem Haskins, by the way, was 119 and 120 in the Big Ten in 13 seasons. That's a 498, just below 500.
And albeit he was doing what everybody else was doing, Manny, he was technically cheating to obtain that.
Yeah. So I mean, it's just, but I will say, like, to sort of counter that, like, I guess a comeback to all of that, and I don't disagree with you at all, but I think the counter to that is, like, at some point, somebody's got to be able to take the reins of this program, and maybe it is Ben Johnson, and we just need to wait 3 or 4 or 5 years. But, like, somebody's got to be able to take the reins of this program and at least get them to decent, competitive Big Ten competition.
Well,
like what? And think about, like, okay, so I just went over Clem's record, right, in the Big Ten, 119 and 120, a 498 win percentage. Think about this. He was a combined, his first 2 years with the Gophers, he was a combined 6-30 in Big Ten play in his first 2 seasons. So if you do the math, that's the rest of the way. He was 113 and 90 in Big Ten play after his second season.
Is that a little Ben Johnson positivity foreshadowing, Manny Hill?
Well, I hope so, but I guess what I'm getting at is, like, it's not impossible to win with this program, but you got to find a way to do it. And I'm not advocating to cheat like what Clem was doing.
Oh, I am. Just don't get caught.
Well, yeah, that part of it.
I
too.
mean,
Yeah.
don't fire the woman right in the papers. So, okay, Manny, and after we've talked about this with other sports, I think it's gotten a lot better under, I guess, towards the end of Eric Kaler and into Joan Gable and Mark Coyle. But at what point does it kind of just become, it's an institutional problem? It's not always on the coach. You know, maybe at some point, the university needs to put more money into the program. I'm not saying it is Williams Arena's fault. That's not what I'm saying. But every time I walk in there, it's very drab. It's just, I get people love the history, but it's not a modern facility. It, at the very least, needs a facelift. And in today's college sports, Manny, with NIL, it takes, and I hate to say this, but it takes the 3Ms of the world, the Best Buys, the Land O'Lakes, the Fortune 500 companies in this town. It takes money from them being thrown into a pool where they say, yeah, we'll help you pay some kids to come here.
The University of Minnesota has to figure out, and I think this is maybe not quite as big of a problem with PJ Fleck in the football program as it is with the basketball programs right now. But the University of Minnesota has got to figure out what they are not doing that some of these other schools, just surrounding them regionally, the Iowas, the Wisconsins, the Illinois of the world.
I can tell you what they're not doing, Manny. They're not rebounding the basketball, making free throws. That's what they're not doing.
But you know what I mean, though, right? Like, it's
100% I do.
Bigger picture, the University of Minnesota has to kind of look in the mirror and say, what are we doing? What are we not doing that some of these other schools are doing? And it's not just, well, we got to hire the right coach, because you can only change the coach, every 4 or 5 years so often before you have to start looking in the mirror and saying, okay, is it us? What do we need to do to kind of change things around here and do things a little bit differently so that we can just kind of inch closer to the Iowas and the Wisconsins and the Illinois. I keep bringing up Illinois. Illinois is kind of, in basketball they're good and they had a nice football season, but Illinois is kind of whatever. But anyway, I digress. The University of Minnesota has to kind of, I think, do a little soul searching, look in the mirror, and just ask some questions. It doesn't mean that, got to start crapping on themselves or, just dissing themselves or anything, but like, just do a little self-evaluation. And I'm not even saying that I know the answers to those questions, but there's got to be a little bit of self-reflection and just say, like, what is happening at some of these other places that's making that we're missing out on, or that we're a little bit behind on.
One thing I do believe could help Ben Johnson, I've said this a few times, I think it would be helpful even if it was a former coach at Ooey Pooey, Indiana University, Purdue University, combined or integrated, whatever they call it. I think it would be helpful if he had somebody on the bench that was a former college basketball coach. I do think that would be helpful to him. There is a bright side in all of this with Gopher Athletics, Manny. Bob's team looks like they could be national championship good. And I know it's whatever. It's hockey. It's just like college basketball. It's a one-game thing, and there's definitely a bit more of a fluke element to hockey than probably any of the other sports. But
as we've seen, yes.
As we've seen, and as Bob Motzko knows very well. But his team's fun to watch, so maybe we'll have that to look forward to a little bit later on in the springtime. Manny, I actually wanted to talk a little bit of Timberwolves basketball with you, but they actually play the evening of this record date. Not that it would really change what we would talk about. But long story short, I'll have you back to meet your Manny quota. Heck, I could actually probably do it again tomorrow, and then it would fulfill January and February. But I won't do that to you. We will talk Timberwolves at some point in the future. Anything else on your mind here in closing you just need to get off your chest?
Well, I will just say it is nice to see the Wolves kind of look more like a professional basketball team the last month or so. They've actually played really well, and you'd like to have those 2 losses to Detroit back. But overall, I mean, they've been playing pretty well, and Ant has really kind of cemented himself as the alpha dog of the team. So that's been good. That's what I'll say on them for now until next time.
Well, you just did me a favor, because for searchability, I can now technically say that we talked about the Minnesota Timberwolves, which will lead to a few extra downloads. So thank you very much for that.
You are welcome.
You are a promotional master of how to promote a podcast. Manny, you're the absolute best. It's great to see you. This is actually being done via video. I'll upload it to the YouTube machine as well. So good to see you.
Although my camera got a little blurry there about halfway through this. I don't know what happened.
I honestly wish mine would get a little blurry. I definitely have a face and body type for radio. I should not be on camera, but trying to stay in touch with how the kids consume media these days. Also sucks I can no longer say that I'm a kid. Closer to 40 than 30. Yikes.
Hey, I'm even closer.
Yeah, I know you are.
40 than that.
You old man.
39 in 3 months. Oh, my goodness.
It's Manny Hill, at Manny Hill 84 on the Twitter machine. That's still correct, right?
Yep.
All right, good deal. Thank you, Manny.
You got it, my friend.
Mr. Manny Hill from Jazz 88 and Score North joining this edition of Minnesota Sports Chat, edition number 152. Thanks to Manny. Thanks to you for coming along for another ride of Minnesota Sports Chat. I'm Ross Brendel saying thank you so much for listening. We'll talk again real soon.